Welcome to the Madison Park Podcast. We're so glad you're here. Join us each week as we recap messages and take a deeper look at what God is doing in the community. For more information, find us on socials or visit madisonpark.church.
Okay. Hey everybody, what's going on? Welcome to the Mad Park Pod. This is Season 1, Episode 8. Super excited y'all are here. We're talking about the message that happened last week, which is October 27th. So we'll link that below in the show notes so you can check it out. Currently in the series Dark Horses. I have some brand new people with me today. I'm super excited about that. If you're watching this with your eyes, on my left is Bethany Brown. She is on staff with us here. She's the one who makes most things happen. Is that true?
Yeah, I call myself the chaos coordinator.
And it's very true.
It's a beautiful title. I love
Thank
it.
you. I actually found a little title plate
you
at
did
Hobby Lobby,
not.
and it's sitting on my desk right now.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
I'm all about that.
I'm really proud of it.
I would say most things happen in a meeting where we say we should do this, and then Bethany is probably the one who does whatever that thing is.
Yeah.
Coordinating the
Yeah.
chaos.
I heard cats. Yes.
Yeah.
Because y'all are a bunch of cats.
Yep.
Yeah, it's Halloween today, and I felt like my crazy cat lady pants were needed. So,
It's
you're
appropriate.
welcome.
For sure.
Yeah.
So, yes, it is Halloween. I'm curious, are you guys dressing up?
Negative Ghost Rider.
You're not fun.
Are you? I think I know.
Actually, I don't really dress up for Halloween. It's one of the
Oh,
I don't really get into it.
Okay, never
I
mind.
just know this is really about all I'll do.
I thought you and Kenzie were talking.
Oh, Kenzie
I know
is
Kenzie
all
is.
for it.
Yes.
She's just dragged me along.
That's what I was saying. I figured at this point you would be full
Yeah.
send.
We're getting there.
Okay.
TBD.
Is Mason?
No.
Okay.
No.
All
Yeah.
right. What about the... Oh, wait. Sorry. I'm going to introduce to my right, if you can see. Sorry, I jumped into that. Is Alyssa Huff. She's a songwriter, worship leader, podcaster, does lots of different things. She's on our team. Super excited to have her today. She'll be a little bit more of a regular, so we're really excited.
Super excited about it.
Yeah, so dressing up, not dressing up?
So, my husband, Jacob, he also is a luthier. If you don't know what that is, he builds guitars and all that fun stuff. He's got a lot of work he's going to do, and I don't want to be alone upstairs fending off trick-or-treaters with baby and 2 dogs. So I'm going to go help pass out candy somewhere else with where my parents are going to be hanging out. And so that means I'll have extra hands to hold baby and all that good
Say,
stuff.
what's Cammy dressing up as?
She's going to be a pumpkin, and I'm going to be a scarecrow. That's what we were for
That's
the
right,
trunk or treat.
yeah.
But I'm going to make it a little more low-key. I'm just going to do the makeup and wear a flannel. I'm no crazy hat or hairstyle or anything this time because, we're going to we're gonna chill out.
Yep. Totally get that. My mother-in-law was at Goodwill and bought a Ninja Turtle costume.
Yes.
That she can't fit in. And I know that I'm bigger than she is, but Allie got it and was like, "You're gonna try it." So
Well, good luck with that.
Yeah, what are you dressing up as, Steven?
nothing. I don't. I told Allie I would give this a shot. So yeah. Anyway, that's how it goes. So just recapping the week, we had Trunk or Treat here on Sunday, and it was pretty amazing. We're going to talk about that a little bit in relation to the message. But I think over 1,000, including volunteers, 46, 47-ish trunks,
Yeah.
700 hot dogs.
Oh, yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, that's about right.
It was a lot, but it was amazing. And kind of ties into a lot of stuff with the message, which again, we'll get into in a minute. But I know you guys all went. What was your experience? Broad strokes.
The weather was fantastic.
It was perfect.
Last
Of
year
all the
it
trunk or
was
treats.
very cold and very wet.
Yeah,
And this
yeah.
year it was great.
It was a huge turnout. It was a lot of fun. There was tons of irrational generosity. There were trunks. People, had trunks and they brought their own things to give out on top of the candy.
Yeah.
And, there was a trunk that was giving away Matchbox cars, bought 500 Matchbox cars to give away to
It's
kids.
like,
I
oh
was
my
like,
goodness.
oh my word, this is
Yeah.
amazing. And, there was another one that had popcorn they were giving out. It was really great to see everybody just loving on the community. And I've had a fun time.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm always surprised. Like maybe this is just me. I'm like always surprised at the number of people that come out, which I think is a little bit interesting. Like as a kid, we like ran around our neighborhood unaccompanied, unsupervised. I don't know.
Yeah.
With a pillowcase, and we'd fill up the pillowcase.
That's awesome.
But like we would never do that now, and so I just think in our community, in this specific community, like it's hitting this need that is just kind of remarkable. And I always think it's, Alyssa, I wasn't on stage this weekend, but Alyssa was. Last year I was on stage. I remember looking out in the service, like in the music part where we're like singing worship songs, and there's like people with masks and
Yeah, that was pretty
Cosmo.
wild. I'm not
Yeah.
gonna lie. Like you're looking out and you're like, oh look, there's
yeah.
Goldilocks and the Three Bears. Cool.
like normally
It's distracting. You're like, wait a minute,
Yes.
focus. Pointing people to Jesus right now, like
Well-
not focusing on costumes.
I just always think like normally the people in costumes are on stage and the people in normal clothes are in the audience. And this is like the reverse of that, which is so wild. Like it doesn't feel like real life. But it's pretty crazy. There was one truck or like I think you kind of talked about it, but it was like a full pirate ship basically,
Oh,
which was
yes.
insane.
Well, and then our
So
small
cool.
group, one of the families in our small group has a little homestead, and they brought their goats.
Yes.
Because they were old McDonald had a
turkey.
farm. So I was like, that was awesome.
Yes, so cool.
Okay, so we'll sort of turn a corner. This will come back into play in just a minute. But so we're in this series called Dark Horses. I always like to start off with this question because you guys are all a little bit. This is the first time on the pod, with the exception of Ben. Again, broad strokes, thoughts on the series, like Nehemiah, the idea of dark horses. Like, does this feel? There's no right or wrong answer here. Does this feel like a highly personal series, or does this feel more like a series where you're like learning more content? I'm just curious because we all are a part of these messages, and I'm always interested to see what people take away. So Ben, you can answer too for sure. I kind of didn't single you out. But.
Yeah, Benny.
No, I didn't take that as like, hey, don't talk. Let
Okay,
me-
yeah, I was just making sure the way I set that up.
No.
We've heard you talk enough, Ben.
I will wait though. I'll let others
You can go first. Anybody can go.
jump in.
Well, I feel like it's a very inspirational series. Just knowing that God can use anybody and anything. But also as far as like content goes, I feel like Nehemiah is not a story that you talk about a lot in like Sunday school growing up. So just
Yeah.
kind of the context of that has been very insightful, and just kind of understanding a piece of Israel's history that I didn't really know too much about before the sermon series has been cool.
Yeah, I 100% agree. I feel like it's taken the story of Nehemiah in a whole different direction. I mean, obviously, when you hear it growing up, it's like, oh yeah, he rebuilt the wall, woohoo. But like, it's taking it onto a whole nother level. And for me, where I'm at personally in my life, like talking about how God can use anyone and wants to use everyone, I feel like that specific sentence is totally different for me now that I've become a mom. Because I feel like these simple truths, like, very churchy, like, God can use anyone. But for me, I feel like it's almost like those simple truths are so much harder to believe sometimes because the devil wants to kind of twist them and be like, oh, well, you're just a mom now, so God can't really. And I'm like, whoa, like, get out of my head, devil. Like, that is not any way, shape, or form.
Yeah.
Like, by being a mom, like, that is one of the greatest callings on my life. Like, so the fact that he can take something like that should be something that we can just hang on to and be like, God can use me. Like, all I have to do is say yes. The fact that he twists that in such a way is just hard to deal with in this specific season for me. So it's a very personal series.
Well, and I can't remember if it was this message or if she just recapped it, but she talks about Nehemiah being like the cupbearer. And I think in my mind, because you're in the presence of the king a lot, it seemed, and again, this is kind of silly because I guess I've never thought about it, but I thought that they would be of like a higher sort of esteem. But the idea of like, you probably don't want your cupbearer to be somebody who's like,
Yeah.
really important because if they die, you've lost somebody. But then, like, the juxtaposition of like, sure, he's not essential, I think is unessential, or is the word maybe that she used. But he does have all this time with the king to build this relationship. And so inevitably they become close just by proxy. And so it's like, I think it's interesting that, like, in maybe position to the world, he is of little consequence, but to the king, he becomes significantly valuable. And I think for me, there's like so many times in my life where I feel so unessential to anything. It was a reminder of, like, perspective. So sorry, I completely cut you off. So
No.
sorry.
No, I don't know that I wasn't like breathing to say something. But yeah, I think it has been very more personal. Just a reminder that God can use, like you're saying, like anybody, and wants to use everybody. And just thinking about, like, often those areas that we feel this, like, nudge from the Holy Spirit to step into are often the ones that we feel undervalued in or under-equipped in.
Yeah.
But those are the very spaces that God wants to use you specifically to be a Nehemiah, to, like, bring life and rebuild and to step into. So it's just interesting to think about, okay, what are those areas that we can, like, step into and start to breathe life back into?
Yeah. Well, I mean, again, sort of like jumping straight into it, the part that's been interesting is I have a lot of reasons why I can't do something, or probably shouldn't, or feel like someone's more equipped to do it. But there's definitely these areas in the world where it's sort of a pain point for me. So I'd be curious, like, she asks the question, like, what breaks your heart in your community or families or whatever? And I'd be curious to know, like, what those things would be for you guys.
Me first.
Oh, no, anybody can go.
Well, me first.
Yeah, you go.
You looked at me and was like, oh, okay. Well, yeah, so you sent me that question, and I was thinking about it, and I was reminded of a few weeks ago. We have staff prayer on Tuesdays where we get together and kind of do a little devotional thought for the week. And I don't remember how we got on the topic or who even brought it up, but somebody, probably Stephanie or Kelsey, brought up that, like, something like only 10 to 15% of students in Madison County are, like, at or above, like, the normal state testing like line or whatever. And I was just shocked by that, and it just broke my heart. And I got to thinking, and I guess this is even kind of a Nehemiah story where I'm like, well, I guess God could use me. Like, why do I have to wait for somebody else to do something about this? And we kind of just started, going off, and brainstorming of, like, well, what can we do to fix it? I was like, oh my goodness, like, we have all this space at the church. Let's, like, open up, like, a tutoring center, or, like, what can I do? I don't have to, like, make money off of this. Like, it was kind of a mind shift change for me of, like, thinking, well, normally you tutor for money. Let's just not do that. Let's just see, how can God use me in this moment to help, increase that rate, to help give kids a better chance of, like, succeeding and stuff. So that really broke my heart, and I hadn't had one of those moments in a long time. And so this sermon series has really been tugging on my heart in that way, where I'm like, yeah, that's so true. And normally I would just be the one to sit on the sidelines and think that somebody else would do it.
Sure.
But this is, like, a real tangible moment for me to think, like, wow, no, I could do this. I just need to do it.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's been something on my mind.
Well, wasn't there
recently.
a statistic too that Kelsey shared that in Madison County, instead of, like, helping kids develop, they lowered the amount of credits that they need?
Yes.
But then it's not enough credits or enough classes to get into college.
Exactly.
There's, like, some weird thing there.
Exactly. They just kind of lowered the bar to make it seem like more people were crossing, I assume, something like that. But then, other colleges just won't accept that, so it kind of puts them in a rut, which is just so sad to me. And I just, breaks my heart.
Crazy, like a crazy cycle.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's really cool. I mean, not cool. It's cool that that's what God's doing in your life. What about you guys?
Well, just to kind of continue on the trend, I think becoming a mom has made my heart break a lot for kids. A lot more now.
Yeah.
And I've seen firsthand what you're talking about. I was a music teacher up, through like the year and a half before Cammie came. And just seeing these kids come in, as a specials teacher, one of my things that I had to do was we had duties. And so my duty was to help out in lunch. And like seeing these kids come, like we would provide like a Lunchable or something for kids that didn't have meals, and seeing some of these kids, I'm like, there are so many of them coming through and getting food, and just the fact that like that basic need is not being met for some of these kids like absolutely wrecks me. And on top of that, like Cammie had kind of a traumatic birth, and so I'm having a lot of friends who are going through some crazy, and family members, crazy situations with their kids where it's like horrible diagnoses. Diagnoses? I don't know. Whatever. You know what I mean. And, losing children, and like just my heart breaks for these families who are trying to navigate how to deal with that, and these hospital stays and the bills and just from the small little tiny sliver of what I experienced, I can't even imagine what they're going through. And this is just something new that I'm kind of working through. I don't even know where to begin on how to help with that. But that's what's breaking my heart right now.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah, I think to that, I had a couple email me this week that was going to be helping to kickstart another ministry this winter. And she was just diagnosed with cancer and is having surgery in a couple weeks to try to remove it.
Wow.
And then go through over a year of treatments that they've already planned and scheduled. Wow. And I just think about, I've talked to and met with all of our group leaders, and the sentiment is that it's very much family and community, and having the heart of like, how do we as a church, like on a large scale, make it family, where when those diagnoses come, whether it's as an adult, as a parent, or as a child, really the community that's like close knit and like family, like we come alongside and we go, how can we help? How can we be there to support? How can we like bring meals or watch the kids, or like maybe we pitch in what we can to help cover medical costs, or, I don't know what that is, but just having those kinds of conversations, I think. And the other part of that is like our Grace House people. That's a majority of who we've been baptizing lately, and wanting to really help them in their next steps. Like, but trying to like find, how do we do that? How can we like get proximity for training and development and discipleship and all that kind of stuff. So, those are a couple of the things that I've been like processing through.
Yeah. I think this is like so unique to our generation, and maybe you guys don't feel this way, but I'll see something that sort of breaks my heart. Is how I worded the question. One of the things for me is like young people in ministry, so right out of college or young, early 20s, late 20s, just because ministry is really hard. I'm sure every vocation is hard, but I've sort of weathered it, and so I just have this heart for really young leaders, especially in the church, and because it's so intertwined with your own spiritual journey, and those two things can sort of get contaminated. But like something that's unique to our generation, I think, is that our first thought is like, how do we make it big? In the sense of like, oh man, I probably, like if I'm going to do this, I probably need to be a nonprofit. I probably need to have a Facebook page. Well, now I got to think of a name for it. And it's like, I see all these barriers of like, well, it could never be big. So like, why try? And I think this series has sort of reminded me of like, it was never really about the wall being big. Like that definitely helps the story and has obviously legs to big projects and things. But like for me, I think it was a reminder of like, if I'm seeing a need, even if it's in one person, in one family, like I could do something about that. and it doesn't need to be. Ben and I joke, whenever I have an idea about anything, I go to the internet and see if I can buy the URL. So I have a lot of, I own a lot of
He
URLs.
so does. I've seen that. Yeah.
I don't know why I do that. I think I own 12 right now.
Wow.
I think.
That's less than I thought you were going to say.
Yeah. I've let some go.
But still a lot.
I almost bought about 6 yesterday just
Yeah.
to. Yeah.
That's
Trying to one up him or something.
No, we just but I think the reminder for me was like was just there are people in front of you that are in need. The other reality, and this is going to sound funny, it reminded me that there are people in front of me that could help where I'm at, but it requires me to sort of be honest about the status of quote unquote my wall, whatever that thing is, and so. I think what's interesting about all of these messages is they are really inspirational about like I could do something. I think it's also caused me to go like, where am I at right now? Which is a question I don't love to answer. I think there's a lot of people who are way more in tune with like their own health, spiritually or mentally or whatever.
Yeah. Which not to like, I mean, this will hopefully stir excitement. That's where she's going this weekend.
Yeah.
Which, so if you're listening, be ready for that.
Yeah.
Stay tuned.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And so I think I'm compelled to like ask some questions of my own life. And I say this probably every podcast now, but like the whole point of this podcast, these conversations, is to give an example of like, after we hear a message on Sunday, it doesn't die there. Whether you've been walking with the Lord for a long time or this is brand new, like you can walk away, you can rewatch the messages on YouTube, obviously, but I think the whole point is to help not just give you information, but to help the conversation that you're having with the Lord and with yourself. And so this podcast is really like that in action. And so I appreciate everybody that comes on and their willingness to be vulnerable about how they're processing messages. Because I'll be honest, if you look back, there are some moments of like frustration and moments of like crap, and but that's the beautiful gift of it. So this leads me to the next question: have you guys seen a Nehemiah story like in real life? Something where somebody sort of answered the call in the middle of probably 100 reasons why they shouldn't, or people would say they don't have to.
Yes, actually, very recently. I have a friend from high school, and to make her very long story short, she had a baby earlier this year, and after 4 days being on this earth, the baby went to be to heaven with Jesus. And even in the midst of this tragedy, she got a call from a friend who was a missionary in Guatemala, and she was just pouring her heart out to her about how there are these babies in these remote locations who are dying because they don't have enough nutrition and all of that kind of stuff. And my friend, even though she was mourning, said, somebody's got to do something, and it might as well be me. And she took her milk storage that she had been storing for her own child, went to Guatemala, and her husband went to all of these remote locations, giving this nutrition to these babies, helping with kids with disabilities. And it was, for me, like, I cannot fathom going through that, but having the strength and the faith to be like, God, what just happened is horrible, but I know that you can use this for the good of these other kids. So I'm going to say yes.
Yeah.
And it really makes me go, whoa, like I need to sit with my faith a little bit and like,
Yeah.
would I be able to make that decision?
Yeah.
Like how strong would I be to be able to say yes in that moment? It's just talking about a modern day Nehemiah story. I feel like hers is that.
Yeah, totally. Well, and I think, I hope I'm not repeating myself. That's how you know I'm getting older. as I'm like telling the same stories over and over again. Because I'm not old. I
No,
just feel
you're
old.
not.
But like, it's those stories, at least for me, and I know we all have our own spiritual journeys. I grew up in the church, and so I was like around churchy things, but it wasn't real for me until I saw God use something tragic and horrible and somehow use it for good. And so I think about those stories, and it's like, man, how do you not see God at work in somebody when that's a horrible, like losing a child would be horrible anyway. But after 4 days, and Alyssa shared a little bit of that story, I think weren't there some like it was a struggle to even get pregnant, right?
Yeah, and this was the second child she had lost.
So
So-
like, I mean, every reason to like feel terrible to, I mean, if it were me, probably be laying in my room with the shades pulled. And yet God sort of like inspires this thing, this great strength in people. And so I think that like for me was what ultimately turned my heart to the Lord, was like, man, this God who is like pursuing me also is taking the junk in my life, the hard things, the tragic things, and somehow using them for good. That's an insane story.
Yeah.
I can't even imagine. Like even to go there and see like the desolate, maybe that's the wrong word, but the extreme need.
Yeah.
Like I can't even imagine. Sorry.
You're okay.
Yeah, that's wild. Have you guys seen anything like that?
I mean, there's been, I think, several stories that have come out of the last year. There's a couple in our church. He leads our CR ministry.
Yeah.
And was connected with this guy who was kind of in transition from, not in Grace House, but in transition from recovery to trying to get work and get housing and all that kind of stuff. Couldn't get a job, couldn't get an apartment because he had to have income to be able to get an apartment. So there were all these, variables. And the amount wasn't, crazy, that he needed to be able to secure housing, but they came alongside and said, how can we help you do this? Like, I think we can maybe pull a couple people together to help, get you into housing at least, so that you can start to make some headway in it. And so I think so often, like you said, we think it has to be this like huge, like we've got to build a wall, like we've got to do this huge thing to be able to make a difference. And sometimes it's like helping somebody get into housing, or like, oh, somebody needs a meal, or hey, we can like help watch the kids for an afternoon, or you know what I mean? Like, I think there are these little acts that because we're human and we immediately go to whatever these reasons we can't, or we can, or it's got to be this or that, that we just miss an opportunity to be the hands and feet of Jesus, because we think, oh, well, God will do that, so I'm going to go try to do this other thing. Yeah. And I feel like that's not the case all the time.
Well, and like I live in this world, I don't know if you guys do, where I'm trying to think. How old are you? Can I ask that?
25.
25. So there's a significant age gap here. 13 years? 14 years, something like that?
Dang, you are old.
I'm not that old. Ben's older than me, so.
Oh, sorry, Ben.
Anyway, but here's what I was
Again,
going to say.
every time I'm on this podcast, my age always comes up, and I'm always the old guy.
That's
It's
funny.
fine, guys.
It's fine. You're not old. We're not
Fine.
that.
I'm
You're
not
not
old.
old.
I don't feel that old.
Good.
Does your back hurt?
It doesn't right now. Thank you.
But like, so for my generation, there was this thing where like, if it's not big, it's not real, I think. Where if it's not a business that's way bigger than your hometown, if it's a nonprofit that's not serving tens of thousands of people, it's like, is it real? And I think this story really calls you back to like that has nothing to do with the reality of like God could be calling you to this small single situation. You know, I've seen it like in our team, like the worship side, we had a young lady who's been through like several extremely hard things in the last year. Some of them we'd send out an email and said, hey, if you can help, and people would help. But most of the time it was like they had relationship with her and just met her needs. And so, like, I think those are the Nehemiah things that like have stuck in my head, where it's like,
Yeah, I think there has to be a humility, a willingness to be unknown. Matt Redman was recently asked, like, in all the success that you've had and all the songs that have like been hits, and you've got people all over the world singing your songs in church, it's like, how are you like remaining who you are, like true to who you are and who the Lord's called you to be? And he had this quote from somewhere, but it was like learning to keep yourself little in the depths of your heart.
Oh, wow, that's good.
And it's easy. It would be easy for Nehemiah to go, look what I did. Look at this thing. Like, I'm the one leading the charge. I'm the one getting all the people together, the resources. I'm the one talking to the king. I'm the one.
yeah,
Me, you know?
yeah,
And I think there is a part of our generation, any generation really, that goes, it's got to be my thing with my name on it, my face on the billboard, whatever, my name on the check that's said from the stage.
yeah,
And I just think more and more the Lord is looking for people who are willing to stay little in the depths of their heart, who are willing to be unknown, you know, and hidden a little bit. And I think that's hard, like, because we're human.
Yeah, especially in this day and age where social media is like everything should turn into a piece
Yeah.
of content.
Right.
So it's like,
Yeah.
you know, oh, I should be able to, you know, put that out there and everybody's like, oh, good job, like, so proud. Like, we're constantly looking for approval.
Yeah.
And it's so hard to just be like, you know what, I did this because I saw a need.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Doesn't need to go out there anywhere. Nobody needs to know. And that's so hard because it's drilled into our
Right.
heads. Like,
Like, you got to tell people about
tell
it.
people about it. Tell people about, you know,
People
how
need to know
wonderful
what you're
everything
doing.
is, you know? And so we get a little bit of that lack of authenticity in our lives. Like, we share all of the, like, look at all the wonderful things.
yeah.
But then behind the scenes, you know?
I did not send you guys this question, so I'm going to say it anyway. So, like, if you think about the wall that Nehemiah is building, like, it was never really about the wall. Like, that was sort of the physical, like, thing that's happening. But think about, like, as a people watching this thing that seemed impossible, like, you know, be built. And I think about, like, I just think about the people who are like maybe just moving the rocks, like how much value starts to, like, personal value they start to feel as this thing is happening and they're a part of it. And so I think I'm reminded, like, these little acts, like it might be dinner or you know, whatever. It's not really about dinner. Like, they're probably hungry, but also it's really about the value that you've given to this person. Like, you've not only humanized them, but like given weight to their life. And so I think about the ripple of those things of, like, it might be that one small act that keeps them going, that then catapults them to start whatever the thing is, or help somebody else. And so I'm just reminded, like, in this series specifically, like, as you shrink it down, there might be a thing in front of you. It might be like feeding people, but really it's about, like, giving dignity and value back to people and saying, like, God like has put enormous value on your life just like we are. So I'd be curious, maybe that's the wrong word, and maybe that's more of a statement, but I think that's what I see. And actually, I'll share this with you because I cannot shake this. So if you're listening to this and you came to Trunk or Treat and you've never been to the church before, we're so glad that you came. Our objective was not to get more people in the doors. It was to just say that we care about you and that there's a God that cares about you, and like there's no link that he won't go to get your attention. But so my brother and I were making hot dogs. If you guys didn't know, my brother and I were manning the grill with Mike and a few other people. And we bought a bunch of hot dogs just so that as people are waiting in line to get through Trunk or Treat, they would have these things. So we started noticing that like the same people were coming back. And then we noticed those people like kind of going to the parking lot and bringing people over, and made this connection that like there was a group of people who were just adults that just came to get a free hot dog. Like they just needed food. Wow. And we've been talking as a staff about the number of times we've seen that come up. And so here's the thing that like has just wrecked me is like we work 40, 50 hours a week at the church doing things. I'm not trying to undermine what we're doing. There's a lot of things that we do that are really important. But I read this book, and I know people have had bad experiences with it, but just as a concept, there's a book called Experiencing God, and Henry Blackaby wrote it, and he basically, the whole premise is simply this: keep your eyes open for where God's at work in your community, and then go there and do that. Like, don't be like, hey, we need to start a softball team because we want to have a softball team if God's like at work, in education or whatever. Like, and so I'm looking at this thing and going, there's like a legitimate need for food. We found out last year for Jingle Jam, a lady walked clear across Anderson, I think they said 6 miles, with her little son or daughter.
Freezing cold with just a blanket bundled around
to get free spaghetti. Mm-hmm. And so what it's done for me is like, we could take some hours and funds and like meet that need as a church. Like we could do that. It takes a little imagination. It takes a little bit of whatever, but the more that we're around, like I'm going, holy cow, like people are just hungry. Like, I mean, it's just a hot dog. Like that's what I kept thinking. Like, and then at the end, there was nobody in line. A gentleman came up and said, basically it was like, could I have the rest of them for his kids? And I just had this moment of like, holy smokes! Like we've really not noticed this thing, and so I think that idea breaks my heart in the sense of like this was a dad who obviously I don't know if he walked there or drove there. I wasn't like creepy like following him, but just needed to feed his kids, and this was the way that he did it. And so I think for me, that's sort of what's been on my mind is like, as a church, what needs are we seeing, and are we willing to go, here we are, like, or here. Is the church singular? It's plural, right? Here we are, not here I am. You get it. Sorry, tangent. But that's really what has been on my mind for the last, honestly, probably like 6 months, because we shared another story about that. But like that, but just the last couple of days, I've just thought I like can see the guy's face, and I don't know, my heart breaks for that.
People aren't gonna. I've heard it said, people aren't gonna want to listen to stuff about the gospel, whatever, if their basic needs aren't even met.
Yeah.
Like how can we meet those basic needs so that we can share them with them, that there's a God who loves them, you know.
And that's why I love that our mission statement is to show people who Jesus is, because that doesn't require us to be here. Mm-hmm. That doesn't require us to be singing a worship song. Mm-hmm. That can be as simple as going, hey, I see you. Here is a hot dog. Hey, I see you. Let me help you with getting you up to speed with your reading. Like, that's showing people who Jesus is. Mm-hmm. The fact that you're showing you care, that you love unconditionally, no matter where they're at. You are showing up for them. Mm-hmm. And I love that.
So I'll ask this kind of last question. This is a little bit like the first one, but hopefully from a slightly different vantage point. What are you guys praying for or hoping to see in our community, in your community? I know we all kind of live in different areas. Like, what are those things that are that you would love to see God like do something in, or that you're praying for? Either way, kind of the same.
I think for me, it's seeing the church, capital C, so
Yeah.
over all of our communities, start to come together. Because like
Yeah.
you said, we're all from different locations. And I can't stop thinking about, like, if we came together, like, I feel like it's so, like, we pit ourselves against each other.
Yeah.
Like, oh, you're from this denomination, or oh, whatever. And I'm like, if we all came together, how much more work we could get done.
Sure.
And so, like, trying to see those relationships built across churches. Like, hey, let's come together and let's focus on this area and what can we do?
Yeah.
Whether it is, just showing up with a grill and grilling stuff, or, doing like you said, a tutoring center. Like,
Yeah.
trying to come together as the church.
100%. And I think what's interesting about that, you and I have talked about this before, but like the perspective of what you're doing, like to say it out loud, we did not serve hot dogs thinking, hey, we're doing this solely because we want you to come to know Jesus. Like, we did that out of obedience of God saying, like, meet a need.
Yeah.
And so, like, there's things where we could come together without an agenda to, like, bolster church attendance, where it's just us being obedient to what God's called us to do. And I think that's, like, I mean, that is a thing that I have wondered for so long. Like, sure, there's theological things that we're going to differ on, but we all agree that, like, kids going hungry is bad.
Yeah.
Right? And, like, God's called us to take care of the widows and the orphans, and, like, why would we not do that? And it's not for that purpose. I think about, like, that guy whose face I can't get out of my head in a non-creepy way. Like, that might be the first interaction with God or church or anything that's positive, and that might be a little seed that's planted for 10 years from now. So I think that's so good. Like, the idea of, like, how do you link arms in a way where it's just not about all the things that it's not about?
Because let's be real, like, the needs in this community
Yeah.
are so much bigger than one church
Yeah,
can
yeah.
handle,
For
like,
sure.
I feel that's something as far as community goes, like seeing the body of believers come together and support each other
Yeah.
is something that I would love to see happen.
100%.
Yeah.
Yep.
Totally hate. I've always feel like churches are always like us and them. It's
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
can't we all just be the church?
I'm
It
with
is.
you on
It's so
that.
frustrating to me. It's one of my biggest pet peeves. It's just that.
Were you going to say something? I don't want to cut you off.
No.
Sorry, I felt like
no.
the way you like leaned over. I was like, here it goes. If you don't have anything, it's
just
cool.
moving. No, I mean, I think I have been sensing for a while this shift in the capital C church of I don't know that I can like say it's this thing. I just think in general the Lord is stirring the church to wake up to like the person and the presence of Jesus and the Holy Spirit and
Yeah.
and the power that is available when we pursue that thing. Not for the sake of like what we've been talking about for numbers or growth or programs or, all the stuff, but like when we're again willing to make ourselves little in the depths of our heart so that he can do what he wants to do, and we just are there to help, like to be
Totally.
a part of it.
Yep.
And I sense that in outside of Madison Park, I sense that in conversations with people all over, that there's just this sense of like God wants to do something new and different if we will just make ourselves available to do that and to step into it. So that's been a prayer of mine for 20 years or
Yeah.
more probably. And I just feel like now it's like I see the stirring happening.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, I think it's such an interesting season in the church because we grew up with the show and the production of it all. And maybe everybody does. I think, like even going back to big cathedrals and huge choirs, maybe it's always had some element of that. But I do think that there's this calling back to like the real thing. And I'll be honest, that's like the big, like, Bethany's going to roll her eyes because this is so true. I can get hyper fixated on something like something that is completely not important to the big picture. And so I think the series has caused me to zoom out a bunch and go like, what's the actual thing that we're doing? And that we're called to, and that God's working in his people and his community, and sort of like just focusing attention and energy and prayer there. And so I think, we're talking about dark horses, and I think the church really is like the ultimate dark horse. Like nobody in society is like the church is going to make some big moves this year. 2025 is going to be big. Like if anything, the church is as irrelevant as it's ever been, or the most irrelevant it's been. And so, I think my hope is still rooted that, as scripture says, like the church is like this hopeful, impactful presence in the community. And that's kind of what this series, I think, is calling me to, is like a reminder of like, we don't have to go through the motions when we see these things around us. Like actually our call is the opposite of that. So anyway, you guys have any closing thoughts, as we're kind of winding down here?
My hope and prayers is that I grew up in the church. My dad's a pastor, and so we always felt like it's always like 10% of the church does like all of the stuff, right? Yeah. You have a person and they like end up doing so many things. So I guess my prayer is just that other 90% of the people would feel like they can do something too.
Yeah.
And just have, I mean, it could be hard, but I would just pray that they feel, or that we at least create the space for them to be able to step in and also, help further the kingdom. Just because if 10% is doing this much, imagine, like you were saying with the churches, imagine what everybody putting their all into it. It would just be amazing.
Yep. 100%. Anything from y'all? Well, go ahead.
Sorry. I feel like just kind of along those same lines, like Pastor Heather opened the sermon being like, this is such a churchy saying, like anyone, and he wants to use anyone and he will use everyone. But I feel like for me with this series, like it's called me to be like, what churchy sayings am I not actually living out?
Yeah, they become kind of just like white noise.
Yes, if I actually lived these out, how would my walk with Jesus change? Yeah. Like you always hear like, oh yeah, there's power in the name of Jesus. Do I actually live that out? Like when I'm like in the middle of something, like do I actually sit and think like, oh my gosh, let's just take a second. Like there's power in his name, he wants to use me. Like all of those churchy things, like coming back to like, this isn't just a buzzword that I throw out. Like this is living and breathing. Yeah. And so it's calling me to take a look at my perspective on it and actually live those things out on the day to day.
Yep. Well, and there's like, you and I have talked about this, on multiple occasions, actually. I'm thinking of a few that I'm not going to share this because it's probably not important. But the point being, like, there's certain things that you as a mother who went through like this sort of traumatic birth thing that I can never speak to another person on, but you could easily make a connection with somebody. And so like reminding like you can't like God does call you into those like hyper specific situations.
Absolutely.
Where only you can be a voice or a bridge in that, which is crazy. I mean, it's like a gift. Do you know what I mean? It's like, it's a gift, even though it was hard.
That's why we rejoice in our suffering.
It's just this, it's so interesting to sort of fight through those things together and watch God use it. So yeah, well, I really appreciate you guys being here. Thank you, Bethany. Thank you, Alyssa. You will see them again. Bethany is wearing cat pants, as she said.
Yeah, sorry guys. I didn't know I was going to be on this today. I really didn't. I'm really proud of my cat socks. They're cats in boxes. So
cats in boxes.
I really like cats, guys. It's kind of a weird thing.
Yep. Not so much that you eat them. No. Yeah, okay. Wow. Sorry, I'm just saying.
That's
I'm just
the
saying.
second time he said something like that to me.
That's the line.
When you think
This
of
is
cats,
not,
do you think of
this is
eating
not
cats?
Chipotle.
I'm just saying that's the line of love for cats. That's it. I'll do anything short of eating them
Oh my goodness.
or wearing them. You don't like have cat mittens or anything. Right?
Is that a thing? Like, surely that's not a
I
thing.
don't
It
know.
actually is.
No, are you
Cat
serious?
fur mittens.
Well, they'll like make, you can like, you know how you can like make stuff out of like fur, yet you can like take your cat's fur and like mold it into like a stuffed animal. It's kind of weird. Not gonna lie.
That's a whole nother level.
That
of
is.
love
It
for
is.
your
It
animal.
really
Oh,
is.
that's the question. Are you going to do that?
No,
Okay,
I
okay.
think I'll pass.
Sorry. I was just checking. Okay.
Good.
I'm going to ask this last question. Did your parents make you check your candy after you trick-or-treated
No
to
shot.
make sure it wasn't laced with stuff?
No.
See, we didn't really ever do the like trick or treating thing.
Yeah, okay.
So it was more like the trunk or treats or whatever.
Yeah.
But
True. Yeah. No.
so we never really did that.
My parents were really concerned that there were like drugs in them.
Really?
And and my dad would always be like, "Well, they're just trying to get more customers." I'm like, "But how would we know? How would we know who to go buy drugs from? If like, oh man,
They put your calling card inside the.
that's what I'm saying." Like the logic did not make sense to me. So we would go through and check every piece. And
How do you?
I
what
mean,
do you
it kind
look
of sounds like
for?
a ploy for your dad to just eat the
Eat
candy
candy.
that he wanted.
Well, and that's the
what
other
that-
thing.
I mean,
That's the other thing is like he would eat some of it. Like the procedure for checking it was
your dad's
pretty
a smart
willy
guy.
nilly. I
So,
know.
I mean,
But like I grew up like I mean even through high school where I'm like literally going why? But why would they put? How would they get more
It's
customers?
funny.
Do you know what I'm saying?
Well, I mean, it's still a thing because there's an acronym. I make a lot of content for businesses,
Yes.
and so that's one of the things I've been putting out a lot right now is
Trick
like
or candy.
safe trick or treating things. Like make sure
Yeah.
you. And there's an acronym they use safe, and the E is examine your treats. So
Wow.
it's still a thing.
What do you guys examine treats for?
Well, there was a story about somebody that found like a needle in their like they pushed it through the chocolate bar wrapper and it was in the chocolate bar.
I
so, like,
I
if
have-
your
I
kid
have
ate
heard of that
it-
happening. Yes.
Yeah,
I just don't understand why. Like, what would your
Because they want to
motive
hurt
be?
somebody.
I guess.
Is that what it is?
What? You're
People
not
are-
even
people
there
are
to.
wild.
I don't even
No,
know.
that's not.
No.
Nope.
I don't know.
Good.
There's something there that I'm like, but I mean, we go through and look at our kids to make sure it's not anything that's like lightly wrapped, like suckers. We don't really do that
Yeah.
because that freaks me out. You know. Anyway, that's a weird way to end the podcast.
Yeah.
Sorry, guys. Check your
Yeah.
candy.
Thank you for joining us. For more information, visit madisonpark.church.